You're listening to Talk Radio Wales, streaming live across the World Wide Web, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Great music, great stories. This is Talk Radio Wales.
Welcome along. And in the news, you would have heard recently that we have new appointments. Professor Laura McAllister and Dr. Rowan Williams will be co-chairs of an independent constitutional commission to consider Wales's future. The aim is really to look at the structure of the UK, and Wales remains an integral part of, and the commission will consider all progressive options to strengthen the Welsh economy. Well, we covered this issue a couple of months ago with Gwynoro Jones. We are ahead of the game, I'd say. We've focused on this for quite some time. Independence, constitutional reform, all sorts of things. Gwynoro is what I would term as an expert in these matters, and I'm sure they'll be knocking on his door soon to get some of his expertise. But we are lucky, fortunately enough, to have him live in the studio with us. Well, he's on the phone anyway, and we can talk to him now. Gwynoro, welcome along. Look, this appointment it must be sort of, trumpeting wonderful sounds to your ears, are they?
Well, of course. You were quite right. We did a podcast early July when Mick Anthony made the initial announcement. And all the while I was thinking, who on earth would be best to lead this commission? Because it needs to have somebody of stature and status and acceptable to the Welsh people. And, Dr. Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury and Wales as well, and Dr. McAllister are two very greatly experienced, well-respected people within their individual fields, and therefore I think the appointments are in first class.
We hear obviously from them that they want to, engage in a conversation with the people of Wales. Dr. Rowan Williams, as you said, was the Archbishop of Canterbury, used to speaking, meeting with people, and probably, one of the best appointments you can have to engage with people. Laura McAllister, former professional ladies footballer, a lot of probably great experience within the community, and again, a good communicator, has to be as an international footballer. So how exactly are they going to engage and animate the community of Wales? I mean, it's a massive geographical area. What kind of suggestions do you have, Gwynoro? How can they do this?
Well, there's been a template before, mind, and people tend to forget this. And I was involved with that on the edges of it. There was a commission on the Constitution, the UK Constitution, back in the late 60s, early 70s, called the Crowther-Kilbrandon Commission on the Constitution. And it had a substantial section on Wales. And it did research on the Welsh economy, it did research on Welsh society, it did research on people's opinions in Wales on various aspects of the Constitution and devolution. So there is a template that they can follow, but they can go much wider than that. The first thing is to establish a clear terms of reference. Because the danger with commissions and the danger with this sort of arrangement is, unless it is confined to, let's say, half a dozen key areas, key issues, key references, it can become too much of a talking shop. And because it becomes too much of a talking shop, it will lose its influence, it will lose its impact, and it will lose its future. So therefore, yes, let's have a constructive participation during debate in Wales. Non-political, because let's face it, every party can claim some responsibility for the development of devolution in Wales since the end of the 1880s. And my book with Alan Gibbard outlines in a timeline. The Liberals can claim a lot of advancement they did. The Conservative Party, in the 50s especially, did many things to advance Welsh devolution and Welsh decision-making. So it's a non-party issue, this, and it must be a constructive debate. How do we involve the people? Well, personally, I would go along first of all, everybody who's listening to this podcast now would be able to make a submission. That would be the first thing. This is not a closed shop. political parties, charities, civic society, the local authorities, the trade unions, business, world of work, anyone will be able to submit evidence to this commission. But it needs to go much further than that. It needs to involve the ordinary people. And one idea, if you recall, when we did our podcast back in July, was I thought of what if the commission had subgroups based on the 5 regions of Wales that apply to the Senedd, and that would report back to the overall commission itself.
Okay.
That is one specific point.
Okay.
This is Talk Radio Wales.
Gwynoro, I'll put this to you now. This is, we've had in the news recently 3 councils in Wales with Audit Wales looking into irregularities, financial, governance, all sorts of things. People across Wales now have got their rural council, the town council, the county council, and they've got the Welsh Assembly, their MS, and they've got their MP. A lot of people will say, look, this is politically, bureaucratically top-heavy, and all we're going to do here is create more jobs for the boys and the girls to that effect, and create extra layers for this constitutional reform to fit in. You're talking about the possibility here now of, if it goes down the road that some people want, of 5 regional parliaments, which will give each of the 5 Senedd regions, which are completely different geographically, culturally. Although Wales is one, North Wales is completely different from South West Wales and Central Wales and so on. Very different communities, very different language to a certain extent as well, the way the language is spoken. Do you see that point, that some people might just be fed up of this, and it's going to be a very difficult task in getting people excited and animated and participating in this discussion?
Well, it's very difficult to get people involved in politics anyway. That has been my great concern about politics throughout my life. People don't apply too much time or their working day or their working week or their working month to political issues. That is why we're in the chaos we are in and have been for a long, long time. Yes, there will be people who will say that. And it is also true that Wales is too heavily governed. What I mean by that is we've got too many local authorities, too many authorities beneath that. That needs sorting out. And they've tried to do it for the last 20 years, and they've not been able because of vested interest within the political parties, between councils and councillors. They cannot get to terms with that. But we mustn't get into that debate today now, Alan, because this is a very example of what I was on about the terms of reference. If we open that as one aspect of the terms of reference of this commission, it could lose the substantive point, although there is a case to be made to establish not how Wales is governed within the UK, but also how Wales is governed within itself. There is a case for that as well. I accept.
Okay.
Your local and national online radio station, bringing you all the news on the hour. This is Talk Radio Wales.
Gwynoro, historically, let's go back a little bit so that we can put this into context. Somebody somewhere threw a pebble into the lake and started these ripples. We have seen successive ripples get a bit bigger and then fade away, ebb away. One, let's talk about who threw that original pebble in and the subsequent pebbles that have gone in. Who were those people? And the other, why has it failed? Why has it broken down each time? Is it because of this such a strong bond and link with the Parliament, the UK Parliament, and successive Labour MPs, successive Labour governments who've just said, Wales is there, okay, but it's a foot soldier, really. This is where the action is in Westminster.
I hate referring back to the book Who's Wales again. We go through that. The governance of Wales, the nationhood of Wales, devolution within Wales has been a hot potato for over 100 years. They've debated about it, and there have been steps, and great advances have been made. The biggest advance, whatever happened before then, was the setting up of the Welsh office and the Secretary of State in 1964. Without that, without what Jim Griffiths achieved there, devolution would have taken longer than what is taken now, because that accepted Wales as a land and nation within the administrative government of the UK. That was a substantive major development in 1964. And it took another 30 years of argument, 2 referendums to get to the Welsh Assembly in 1997. Yes, it is a hot debate because the people of Wales are divided on it. There are people who see themselves as British first or British only. There are people in Wales who see themselves as British and Welsh. There are people who see themselves as Welsh with a bit of Britishness. And there are people who see themselves as Welsh only. We are a tribe of about 4, 5, 6 different variants. And inevitably, therefore, all this is an issue. That is why it's important to have a commission with constructive participation, sorting out what is the future for Wales. Why has it arisen now? The answer to me has been clear. I said these things during the Brexit referendum. Once we moved and got out of the European community, the whole UK Union would unravel. What kept the UK together and its divisions for many years, 4 or 5 decades, was the European Union, and we were all within it. The minute that happened, Brexit happened, UK Union unravelled. And therefore the Scottish argument has come strong. The Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland argument has come even much stronger these days. There's a big movement there now towards some sort of unification within the next 5-10 years. But the second thing, apart from Brexit, has been the election of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Because you see, what Boris has done, and I hate to call him by his first name, I don't like that, to be honest. But what the Prime Minister has done is he has challenged the devolution settlement. He has said, first of all, he accused Blair of making a big mistake in introducing devolution. He then, at the UK Market Bill, Internal Market Act of last year, which took away a lot of powers from the devolved governments. He's now taken away powers of how we spend the former EU money. Wales used to be responsible for that. Now that's going to be handled from Westminster. The Shared Prosperity Fund and the Levelling Up Fund, bypassing the Welsh Assembly. So there are lots of reasons why it is necessary to decide for ourselves in Wales what would we like. Where would we like to go?
Okay.
What sort of future do we see for ourselves? We need to have it in our own hands, this issue.
Is there a burning issue within your community? We'd love to hear from you at Talk Radio Wales. Call or text on 07308 598 604 or email manager@talkradiowales.com. Follow us on Facebook or tweet at Talk Wales.
Gwynoro, the Commission's job, they say, is to ask what structures and constitutional provisions will best release the potential of Welsh communities and Welsh people. There are sort of 2 distinct arguments here, 2 distinct debates or discussions to be had. One is obviously Wales devolution and what goes on within Wales, and the other is what we get from the top table at Westminster. Mark Drakeford almost has navigated, for want of a better word, Wales into a strong position at that top table with Boris Johnson, who wants Wales to stay within the Union. Do you think the people of Wales get that? And do you think that Dr. Williams and Laura McAllister will be able to come up with a formula and questions and possible items to take for Mark Drakeford to take to Boris Johnson and say, look, we have talked, people of Wales have spoken, we represent the people of Wales as a devolved government, but also coming to this table, we want A, B, C and D if we are to remain in the Union. If not, I'm afraid the people of Wales will be asked at a referendum to take the vote again as to whether we stay or leave the Union.
Well, that is, I hope, is what the intention of the Commission will be about, to arrive at an agreed consensus on the future and the way ahead for Wales. It's not going to be easy, okay, because there are divisions, there are disagreements. You know what I mean? As you just quite rightly said, there are people in the Conservative Party who don't want things to move much further than it is now. There are people, the Welsh Liberal Party want federalism. There are people in Plaid Cymru who want independence. Labour want radical federalism, they call it. Now, it's not going to be easy. But let's be constructive about this. Let's find out what the Welsh people think. And there are many ways of finding out. We've just talked about it earlier. Let's see what happens. And then we can go to Westminster and say, look, 2 years' time. This is not a quick fix, by the way. We've got to hit the last Constitutional Commission in 1968, 69 took about 3 years but that was a UK one. This is going to take a couple of years, probably, if not more. So therefore, it's going to take a while to get to a settled agreement. And when we get to a settled agreement, there could well be disagreement still. During the Constitutional Commission back in the late 60s, 70s, there was a minority report. The commissioners themselves disagreed amongst themselves. There was a majority report and there was a minority report. This could well happen in Wales. There could be the majority of the commissioners will come with one view, but 3 or 4 of the members might disagree and submit a minority report. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But it's good that it's happening. We are taking the decisions ourselves. We are not going to be on the sidelines any longer. This is our chance to inform the Welsh people of what is the best way forward and get an agreement and to advise and make the Westminster government aware, look, this is the way ahead. Because remember now, behind all this, there is one fundamental issue, and that is what's going to happen to Scotland and Northern Ireland. That is, those two are further ahead in this debate than even Wales at the moment. You know, the Scots are clear they want independence. The Northern Ireland, if you look at the figures now, half the people of Northern Ireland want to reunify with the South, and that's because of Brexit. So many decisions could happen. Let's have ourselves asserting our importance and stature, as it were. This is where we stand. This is what we'd like. And if some people don't agree with it, well, you can't avoid that.
Right.
The real question is, sorry, yeah?
There's a lot of money that flows out of Wales. A lot of money comes in as well from the UK government. But the money that's flowing out, the justice system, okay, we've just seen now that Police Commissioner David Llewellyn has secured 600,000 from he's found £600,000 funding, and he's putting that towards victims of domestic abuse and working on issues like that in Wales, which are very important issues. Do you think that is one element, just if you take one item that they could go to Westminster with and say, look, you know, we have these problems. They are very difficult areas within Wales, and we cannot see this money filtering out of Wales. Nothing coming back with all the court proceedings, with all the fines, everything that's going into that. We are not getting a penny unless we work extremely hard and beg. Do you think that is, you know, those are the kind of items that should be hammered out with the Commission as well?
That's right. I think, you see, the whole argument has been going on for decades, even when I was in politics, and before that. Can Wales afford, for instance, to be independent? Or can Wales afford to be even semi-independent or whatever? Now, the Commission needs to have a clear reference as to the financing of Wales. The money coming in and the money going out. Now, but that's not the end of the story. If it turns out that there's more money coming in than going out, that doesn't necessarily mean that Wales can't stand on its own 2 feet. You see, whether you can stand on your own 2 feet or not depends on what are the responsibilities of that government and the decisions it makes. How much money would it spend? At the moment, we are paying for matters that will hardly benefit Wales. The classic one is HS2. So I've forgotten what the figure is. It's a substantive figure that Welsh taxpayer is paying towards HS2. The benefits to Wales from HS2 is limited. And the Welsh government doesn't get any penny in recompense. But Scotland does. Scotland and Northern Ireland will get money because their taxpayers are paying a contribution towards HS2. Wales doesn't. It's all these issues thrown into the melting pot, isn't it, Alan? This is the point.
Okay.
Your local and national online radio station, bringing you all the news on the hour. This is Talk Radio Wales.
In the Welsh Government's programme, following the appointment of the co-chairs, the remaining members will be confirmed next month, and its first meeting is expected to be in November. Now, we've got Dr. Rowan Williams and we've got Laura McAllister. I'm sure there'll be some ministers that will be assigned this as members of the commission. But you yourself, your son, who's followed in your footsteps and has written extensively on these issues. I mean, he probably is one of the leading experts in Wales at the moment. Do you think people like that should be invited on to the commission?
First thing, no minister should be part of the commission. This is an independent commission. The Welsh Government should not be seen to be part of it. That must be established from the outset. As to who should be on it, well, you know what I mean? Yes, you mentioned Kenneth, another one that I mentioned. Two of them, Dr. David Belding as well, who was the former AM and a former Conservative member as well. Now, he has written extensively. Another person that comes across to my mind is Geraint Talman Davies, for instance. There are important, good people around that should contribute to all this. I just wonder, this is off the top of my head, by the way, and I don't know whether it's acceptable or not to people listening. There are also the odd expert who don't live in Wales. Like Professor John Denham in Southampton, for instance. Have we got to have it Welsh only? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
What I want are people who know the subject. People who can do the research and who understand the whole issue. Far more, if I may say so, than I do. You know what I mean? You made reference to me there. I don't follow as closely now as I would have done years ago. But there are people who do. And they need to be part of this commission. But what's also important is not just the commissioners. What will be the support mechanism for the commissioners? People will need to do research. People to do background reports, people to feed into the commission, people to work with local authorities, to work with local communities, to get the participation of people across Wales, PR experts even. You know what I mean? I see two levels, commissioners and working group activists who know what they need to do, who know how to do it. It's a two-pronged thing. It's not just commissioners alone.
This is Talk Radio Wales.
Looking at, one of the biggest issues we've had in the last 2 years really was the pandemic, and obviously Mark Drakeford, the Welsh Government, there's been a big celebration that, they've done extremely well. And yet, I'm speaking to people daily. I'm hearing conversations. I've experienced it myself. People are waiting 7-8 hours for an ambulance. They cannot get a doctor for love nor money. These are the burning issues, Gwynoro, for the people of Wales.
Yes.
A commission on where do we stand, what's the governance, how do we fit in, where do we go at the top table in Westminster? Do you think that the commission, during this conversation, need to say, look, let's break it down. Let's look at health. Let's look at education within the commission. Let's look at, as you say, finances within the commission. Let's look at employment. Let's look at our resources, the oil, the offshore, the wind farms, all of these things. I mean, it's a huge amount of work, isn't it? Where do you start? Where do you stop?
Well, there we go. That's what I'm on about. It's not for me to decide the terms or references, but I have a fair idea what the sort of things. But you raise an issue there. Again, I go back to the commission, that I say it's a template, back of 69-73. They had a research paper on the Welsh economy and all the issues you are on about now, the situation with health and education and industry and employment. And it was part of that paper. I have a copy of the research paper with me still. So yes, that is part of the argument, because we've got to make the whole issue relevant to the people of Wales.
Yeah.
Because the point is as well, you see, the Commission can't answer that particular problem. But the Commission can say why we are, can find out why we are where we are today, as it were. Why have certain things happened? Why are we short of money in health? Why are we short of money or in problems in education or whatever? It can be part of the whole structure. You know what I mean? I have ambitions in my mind for this commission, as there was, as I told you, with the commission of the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. This can be one of the most important contributions to Welsh political life in my lifetime.
Well, we leave it there. Gwynoro Jones, many thanks for speaking to us, and we'll watch this one with interest. And you heard it here first on Talk Radio Wales. Diolch yn fawr, Gwynoro.
Yeah, thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Is there a burning issue within your community? We'd love to hear from you at Talk Radio Wales. Call or text on 07308 598 604 or email manager@talkradiowales.com. Follow us on Facebook or tweet at Talk Wales.